This is the Dangerous Waters podcast, where we dive deep into dangerous waters. I'm your host, Alex, and in today's episode, we'll be talking about the new surprising official statement from Hamas on the events in Syria, Israel's emboldened aggression in the region, as well as a closer look at Syria's Saydnaya quote-unquote slaughterhouse prison. At home, we'll also be taking a look at Pete Hegseth, the whole fiasco around him, and updates to Trump's cabinet picks, as well as a closer look at Luigi Mangione, the man who is so popular right now, the man who murdered the United Healthcare CEO. With that being said, let's get straight into it. Welcome back to the show. It is so good to have you here. But before we get started, I just want to announce that I finally made an X account. X/Twitter. This will be my main platform for how I communicate. And the @ is @DWatersPodcast. Once again, that is @DWatersPodcast. I am very excited to be starting my journey on X over there. And if you want to meet me, if you want to talk with me, communicate with me, that's the platform to go to. In any case, let's get into it. Let's get into the news. Our first story of the day, we have an official Hamas statement on the events that just happened in Syria. I'll be honest with you, when I first saw this, I was quite shocked. This came out of nowhere, and most of the people who you would imagine who support Hamas and support the Palestinian cause would actually be quite against what happened in Syria. If you realize the gravity of the situation of Syria's Assad regime collapsing, that involves the collapse of the infrastructure networks, of the weapon shipments, personnel, transportation, all of that between Lebanon, smuggled into Gaza, as well as Syria. So Iran was using Syria as a conduit to push their resources and their agendas into the regions around Israel. So this statement that Hamas made was actually quite shocking, and a lot of people were very surprised. I'll read a bit of it. It says, quote, the Islamic resistance movement, Hamas, congratulates the brotherly Syrian people on their success in achieving their aspirations for freedom and justice. So the statement also goes on to mention topics like unity, national cohesion, overcoming pain points, the spirit of brotherhood, challenges, and saying that Syria will become the future of really the Arabs. They want Syria to be like the hub of the new Arab leadership, and at the same time also condemning Zionism. But this statement was really, really a shock because, you know, the people who support Syria's demise, or the demise of the regime, are usually not the same people who would support Gaza and Hamas. Like, this is sort of a very distinct two groups, two factions, but this statement was really strongly in support of Syria and wishing well for the new regime. So we'll see what's going to happen from there, but that was definitely not something in my bingo card. Next up, we have Israel's emboldened aggression in the region. I've been reporting on this for the past 3 days, but now Israel has conducted over 300 airstrikes. These are part of a large-scale Israeli operation to sort of take advantage of the instability in the region and the lack of regional security in Syria to essentially destroy every possible military asset that they can get their hands on. So what does that mean? We're looking at massive airstrikes going into destroying tanks, destroying artillery, air defense networks, the entire Assad regime air force, ammo depots, military bases, including Russian military bases. Those are also being targeted, as well as chemical weapon and missile research facilities in Syria. So all of that is really just targets of the Israeli strikes. they want to make sure that Syria remains weak, that if they do end up rebuilding, that their military will have to start from ground zero and will not be able to use the former regime's military assets. And really only Israel has this capability of doing so. They recently just pretty much won against Hamas and Hezbollah, two massive Iranian power players in the region, and now they are setting their eyes on a new prize. We also have reports of Israeli tanks that were spotted around 20 kilometers or around 12 miles away from the outskirts of Damascus, which basically means that they have gone well beyond even Mount Hermon, and they are now really trying to establish a stronger foothold in Syria. This is an invasion of Syria's land, but in Israeli interests, they believe this will be able to help them repel any possible attacks from Syria. Now, let's take a look at something very interesting. This was kind of swept a little bit under the rug, but recently has become more the center of attention going on, is the Saydnaya slaughterhouse prison. So this prison was actually built in the 80s under Assad's family, who was in power back before he was. But more recently, since 2011, Amnesty International has estimated roughly 30,000 prisoners have been executed or died within the prison walls from 2011 to 2018. And more recently, we have at least 500 who have been perished between 2018 and 2021. So this is a very, very dangerous prison complex. There are two major buildings involved in here. We have the White Building, which housed military officers and troops who were possibly disloyal to the Assad regime. We also have the Red Building, which housed those who were against the regime, so political prisoners. And at any point in time, this facility could house roughly between 10 to 20,000 occupants. There was also a well-documented basically death room or execution room, which was under the White Building, in which up to 100 people at a time could essentially just disappear and never be seen again. Really sad stuff happening in that prison under the Assad regime, but looks like right now we have some new developments coming in. The entrances to the prison complex, secret entrances, have been located, but it looks like for now at least, all the people that could have been rescued have been rescued. There are still people saying there could be lingering facilities underground that have not been reached yet, that they don't have access to yet. Still hard to say, but it is a very fascinating development going on with this prison complex. Families are pouring in to this complex now that it's been liberated from the Assad regime, and they're going in, they're combing through the records, they're seeing if they can find their family members who are in the prison, and a lot of strong feelings about what is going on there. Now that the regime has been toppled, there has been even more evidence coming out of the brutal tortures and really executions happening within the prison walls. Now, obviously, this facility was kept under wraps. It was completely secret, and a lot of media who wanted to go in and take a look were not able to, obviously, because it was under the Assad regime and they wanted tight control over the location. But now that it's been opened up to the public, essentially, there have been phones found with video footage that have actually been put online. I do not recommend you watch any of these videos. If you stumble upon the footage, please don't watch it. It is very brutal and very disheartening things going on. And for the record, I watched some of the footage that came out of there, and I'll just say it's good that this prison is no longer in operation. I'll just put it like that. And now, more on domestic affairs coming right after this break. Let's transition into what is going on at home within American borders. The major news story of today is Luigi Mangione, the man who is forcing urgent meetings around corporate America. But before we get to him, a little quick segment on Pete Hegseth, the Trump-appointed potential Secretary of Defense. This is a very important man and a very important decision. Let's take a look at that. To understand the gravity of this situation, Hegseth is a Fox News host, and he has credentials which to some senators on the Republican side were sort of concerning, or at least not really of the material required to be a defense secretary, at least according to those who are on the fence or who are against it. But Trump, his allies and supporters, as well as Hegseth himself, have really been able to take advantage of the situation. They have done massive campaigns to support him. We have a lot of Trump allies who are criticizing the senators who are holding out against his nomination or confirmation. We also have Hegseth himself going into Capitol Hill practically every day, meeting with concerned Republican senators to make sure that he can secure their nomination. And right now, I'll be honest, it's looking very good for him. Hegseth has a strong chance of getting into this position, which, if we look back even a week, that did not seem possible. People laughed at him when Trump announced him as the Secretary of Defense. People were saying, oh, what a joker. He's a Fox News host. What the hell is he going to do? But look, here we are. The tide has turned. Things are shifting. He might actually secure that position. And Trump has been backing him all the way. He's been pushing for him, and the senators who are against him have been threatened with primaries. So it's a lot of aggressiveness going on. The same kind of approach that Trump is taking with other countries seems to be working at home as well with these Republican holdouts. And so much so that Tom Cotton, a Republican senator, has said he believes that all of these Trump appointed cabinet members will be able to be confirmed in the Senate, every single one of his nominees. So that is huge news. He believes everything will work. And this is really, quite frankly, something that was bound to happen, these challenges, considering the controversial nature of Trump's cabinet picks. But right now, it's looking like, for now at least, Trump has secured this victory. Now let's go on to the main topic, Luigi Mangione, the man who is really making corporate America scared beyond belief. So we already know what happened with him. He basically murdered the United Healthcare CEO. This happened early in the morning. He was not secured by any armed security. So what does that mean? That means that corporate America is incredibly scared, especially those in the healthcare sector, and executives are looking into bolstering their private security so that they can potentially avoid future attacks on their lives. Let's look at Luigi Mangione himself. He was a valedictorian in a private high school in Maryland. He was very bright. People say he had over 130 IQ. He was an Ivy League student at UPenn. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science and mathematics. He also did a master's in engineering. So this man has a very strong academia background, as well as a wealthy family. They say his family is one of the wealthiest in the entire state of Maryland. They have a lot of real estate holdings. They own country clubs, healthcare facilities, and more. So they have an extensive grasp on sort of the industry. And fascinatingly enough, this really was kind of a shocker to me, at least, was his grandparents founded what was called Lorien Health Systems in 1977, which was a healthcare facility. And this facility was actually a place where Luigi himself worked in 2014 while he was in high school. And people have found that, his family practically owns the entire equity of the company. And they have some controversies in being not really up there in terms of medical statistics, in terms of the patient treatment and the quality of care. There have been a lot of problems there. So who knows, maybe Luigi was able to see some of the things that happened. It clearly, by doing this, he is going against society, but as well his family. And he's really, I think he holds a lot of strong feelings about the healthcare system stemming from his experiences working in this location. Now, if you take a look at his mind, really, he was strongly into philosophy. He loved figures like Nietzsche. At the same time, though, this is the fascinating part, because a lot of people don't really see this aspect of him, but according to his X account, which is actually still up right now, whereas practically everything else has been scrubbed off the internet, but the X account still remains, and he is actually very much against pseudo-intellectualism, especially criticizing figures like Jordan Peterson. So this was also very interesting, because a lot of people, they'll read Jordan Peterson and they'll say, wow, Jordan Peterson changed my life. He was really a powerful guy. Whatever he says is not what people say about him. It's all that, yada, yada, yada. But he was very much against Jordan Peterson, and he said it was because Jordan Peterson created complicated ways of saying very simple concepts, and he was against anyone who did that, because why would people want to waste their mental bandwidth on trying to figure out what a man was saying when it could be written in a much simpler way? Now, he also is against wokeism, identity politics, and DEI. So, being a anti-capitalist, a lot of people sort of see him as a crusader of the left, of really showing it to the corpos and yes, he did show it to the corpos, but he was also sort of right-leaning in these social issues. This is a man who retweeted Peter Thiel videos going against wokeism, so he was pretty strongly and firmly in this position. Not really a partisan man either. He's sort of all over the place, but he has quite a few strong opinions on different topics. He also was big on agricultural technology advances, as well as supporting nuclear energy. So a very fascinating individual, and definitely something that we did not expect. His background, his credentials, really not something we expected of a CEO shooter. But here we are. This is America. This is the world we live in. And with that being said, thank you all so much for tuning into the show. I hope to catch you guys in the next one. See ya.